Sunday drive. Your taxi. You're home away from home. We've shared your journey. Now with Mazda Assured, the journey continues. With a guaranteed future value, you can enjoy a new Mazda more often. Search Mazda Assured today.
After 6 months of pain, our last roll of the dice. We can't run our lockdown. 9 years.
Into the fire.
In our quest to learn more about what happened to our fathers, Janelle Wells and I began peeling back the layers of the healthcare system in our respective rural areas. And what we were discovering was alarming. It was only a matter of days before people were coming and saying, I understand what's happened to you and I know how you feel because something like that has happened to me. My upbringing in the valleys and beaches in the Manning River district of New South Wales was in many ways idyllic. But this is also home to the oldest demographic in New South Wales, with the worst cardiac outcomes in regional Australia, and a health service that struggles to cope.
Morale of the staff working at Manning Hospital is terrible. Staff work in conditions with no infrastructure and no support.
Medical professionals, including doctors and nurses, contacted me, but all were fearful of the consequences if they were identified.
Anyone who speaks out is always under threat of not having their contracts renewed.
Dr. Gupta, the whistleblowers operate in a climate of fear, they tell me. Dr. Krishna Gupta, chairman of the Manning Hospital Medical Staff Council, was dismayed that whistleblowers in his region, some probably colleagues, aren't given more protection.
They are the people who keep us honest and keep us on guard. They point out our deficiency and we need to work on that. So if that's the case, that's very unfortunate.
Were you literally threatened with your job?
That was said, yes.
Speaking carefully, even from the relative security of his recent retirement, long-time specialist at Manning Base Hospital, Dr. Philip Walcombe, confirmed the climate of fear in the local health system. How did that impact medical staff?
Well, I think, you go with the flow. In essence, if you start rocking the boat, particularly when you're out in a place like this, you don't want to lose your job or get a bad name for creating problems. The more you jump up and down, the more you shun.
And who's doing the shunning?
People who provide the money.
And who are they?
The Hunter New England Health.
Hunter New England Health runs Manning Base Hospital, the source of many terrible stories that were told to me. Perhaps the most confronting involved allegations that a young quadriplegic patient who, as he lay in his bed, was physically assaulted and threatened by a hospital security worker.
Patient disclosed that a man came in and threatened and physically assaulted him.
It makes me lose faith in the whole system. Those sort of things shouldn't even happen in an ordinary situation, let alone in a hospital. It's just horrifying.
His mother Kerry knows her once surfing champion son struggled with his disability and says he suffered complex mental health issues that made him a very difficult and challenging patient.
Pressed his elbow into his neck.
But she says threats of any kind are totally unacceptable.
I'm just trying to picture, him lying in bed and this great big security guard, putting pressure on his neck. He wouldn't be able to do anything, just awful. He's got no way of retaliating whatsoever. It's just horrible.
The security guard who assaulted the quadriplegic patient is the partner of Manning Hospital's general manager, Jodie Nias. Ms. Nias confirmed that the incident had been investigated, but said she'd declared a conflict of interest. The investigation resulted in the security guard being sacked. This is a young man who has found himself in a body that doesn't work. He was frightened, he was intimidated, he stopped eating and drinking. That literally took my breath away. A number of medical professionals told me they lacked confidence in Ms. Nias's administration, but she maintained during a long meeting with me that she is the right person to be in charge of the hospital.
The staff, everybody, knows there are issues simmering that are never being addressed.
The general manager of the Manning Hospital told me that she could run the hospital with her eyes closed.
I don't think anyone could run a hospital with their eyes closed, and I think that's probably a lack of perception of really what it takes.
If there was one thing that you would change, if you could, to improve rural health, and particularly in this area, what might that be?
It's a very hard question. I wouldn't know where to start. I really wouldn't.
There's an arrogance in bureaucracy and government that we don't count. And our ageing population, which we are the majority here, are just being dismissed.
Long-time local resident and author Di Morrissey runs and funds a fiercely independent local newspaper with her husband Boris.
That's a lot of correspondence.
That's
About
4 years. But you cannot receive some of these letters and not think, what can we do?
She and her partner have become unhappy for hospital whistleblowers, patients and their relatives who write to her because no one else it seems will pay attention to their stories.
It's heartbreaking.
Di believes many people in men feel discouraging that their health needs are not a priority to those in charge.
You feel like you don't count because we're not listening. And money goes to things that don't seem appropriate when basics should be looked after.
Have you got a health plan?
And my health plan, I said to a doctor friend, what do you do when you get sick? What are you going to do? He said, get in the car, drive to Sydney, and I'm going to call my way.
It's like we're in a third world country. It's like the stuff we see on telly about Syria or Lebanon or Iraq, and there was just everyone. And I've got to say there was people dying.
Former miner John Stinchmore is another casualty of Australia's rural health system. What he suffered as a patient in Comar and Dubbo hospitals, where Janelle's dad also spent his final days, is so shocking it's almost unbelievable.
I went to the hospital and the charge nurse looked at me and she said, yes, that's serious.
Last December, John walked into Cobar Hospital with an infected blister on his little toe. So began a nightmarish series of events. Bounced between Cobar and Dubbo hospitals, a round trip of 8 hours, he worried his toe would deteriorate over the Christmas period when he wouldn't be able to see his GP for nearly 2 weeks.
All those GPs were going on their holidays at 12 noon on the 20th of December. They're not coming back till the 6th of January. And he said, oh, it looks like it's going all right. How about we just sort of leave it at that, and if it gets bad again, go to the hospital.
When John finally got to see a doctor at Cobar Hospital, he was told his infection was so serious his toe was now beyond repair.
And he said, how do you feel about going to Dubbo or probably an amputation? And I said, well, mate, if I had a pair of Volcos, I'd just take it off myself, but I don't think I picked something up. And he said, well, you can drive to Dubbo. And I said, I put my foot, I can't drive to Dubbo with that foot.
John spent 3 days waiting for an air ambulance, all the time his toe infection worsening.
All the time I had no antibiotics. And the nurses kept saying to me, you should be on antibiotics. And I say,
Where are they?
let's do it. And they say, well, we're only nurses, mate, we can't do that.
Finally in Dubbo, another night passed before he was taken into theatre to have his toe cut off under a local anaesthetic.
And I can hear them working. And all of a sudden the tourniquet on the thigh tightened right up. And I thought, that's the signal. And it hurt.
So how can all of what happened to you be explained?
Well, it can't be explained. It's a total breakdown in the system. There's too many patients being pushed in here, and there aren't enough staff to do the job. Somebody needs to get these people and give them a good shake. Because it's more than my piffling thing with my toe. And I know I could have died, but I didn't. So I say, Mr. Hazard, it's time to get out and face the music.
There will always be a job. It's just not that simple. No more excuses.
You hand out billions of dollars. What's going wrong?
How to make a sex system better.
The key is coming again. The key is empowerment.
But at what cost?
I know about your dad. I know about so many other dads. It just doesn't go away.
That's next on 60 Minutes. Everything she loved
You had to take Ben's money for years.
has turned out to be a lie.
10,000 in cash. That's the last.